We have our presenters here today. Again, I thank them so much for spending their time with us. And this is your last chance. Ask any questions you want and take advantage of their expertise and their openness and their ability to answer our questions.
We totally got them confused.
Too much information?
Just shy here in Eaton County.
Okay, I'll start. Is there anything today you learned that you can take home and think about implementing? If so, what? What caught your attention? Is there anything?
It doesn't seem like it takes that specialized equipment to plant into
Correct.
green.
Right.
Actually, the less the better.
Yeah.
The less the better.
In fact, I took off my,
Okay, you said it's actually better. You mean it plants easier than
Oh,
field
yeah.
ground?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Does it take a number of years to get to that stage?
No.
You'll see a total difference just planting rye in the fall and,
And then coming in and planting right into it, planting corn?
or soybeans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the first year.
Yeah.
so the coulter was supposed to take the place of the disc. That was the design, that was the idea, when the first no-till planters came out. But, we found that really doesn't benefit making that trench, because if you don't get it set right and it's too deep, now you've got a false bottom, and the other thing is it picks the row unit out of the ground, or it can.
Takes pressure.
Yep. And the other thing, one of the problems that I found out, and you saw in that picture where there's a lot of space, is I had too much down pressure on the closing wheel.
Right.
So it was also picking the unit up out of the ground.
Yeah, in our case, we still running a fluted coulter. We're right at where the glacier quit in Ohio. So we're right at the foothills. So we have a lot of rocks at 2 inches deep that probably as big as your head, And we took them, we went to one of these meetings like this, and the guy says, take your fluted coulters off, you'll get along okay. Well, we didn't have trouble planting. The trouble we had was when that double disc opener hit that rock, that it would actually either bust a bearing or split the blade, because you was running straight into it, where with the fluted coulter, it's twice as heavy as those disc blades. Yep. So it actually starts that unit up over the rock before the double disc hit it, see? So
You were using it more of just a kind of
A bodyguard.
yeah, bodyguard to protect that disc blade.
just kind of get it
Yes.
started over.
Yeah, so we run our fluted coulters very shallow, maybe an inch is all, where we're placing the seed at 1 3/4 inches or 1.5 inches. Because of the amount of residue we have, I don't like to put corn 2.5 inches deep with 4 inches of residue on top of it, So we found about 1.5 inches when you have 2 inches of residue works really well, because the anchor roots still go down and gets into the soil. The only reason you plant corn deep is to get those anchor roots down to help hold that corn plant up,
We're still building up to 4 inches.
Yeah, right,
Residue.
right. Yeah.
I think there's lessons out there, though, of guys that get too aggressive on the covers in the fall, right? Like too much rye out there. I know a number of folks that have been flying on annual rye after beans down in southwest Michigan.
Yes.
And like it got really dry, they went too much annual rye, couldn't get the planters in the ground this year.
Right.
And so I think there's lessons out there, the guys that have done it wrong, and then the guy, you have 1 year of bad luck with it, and everybody walks away from it, right? It's the termination, right? I mean, green or dead, no in-betweens, right? So I think there are lessons out there like to learn from others that have screwed it up before.
Well, and I think too, you're going to have those times when when it didn't work. And to me, it's no different than my neighbor, conventional neighbor, replanted 700 acres of corn. You know, he didn't think a damn thing about that. You know, that's just part of my plan. I just have to replant so much corn. Well, I get up, I can't get it done right one time. I don't want to do it twice, you know. But there's times that cover crop fail, and you just have to get over that and move on. It's just like if the corn crop fails, you do something to make it work, you know. Because every year the weather, you know, if we would have ideal weather years, it wouldn't be a problem. We could keep doing the same thing every year. But, you know, we haven't had the same year for 5 or 6 years now, you know.
Does anybody know where we're at on rainfall generally in the county? Are we above, below? Does anybody have an idea?
Probably on the internet.
Yeah, where, right? I was just curious.
The rain came completely opposite as it has in the last
4 years, right, yeah.
this year.
I think most of Michigan's
Completely
above.
opposite.
Above?
I believe it's above,
Okay.
yeah.
That late part of June and July, and wheat harvest got us there.
Yeah.
Right, right. So, do any of you guys watch these videos on YouTube?
Yeah.
Do you watch equipment go on or different, okay. What about the Facebook groups, the cover crop Facebook? Does anybody do that?
Follow it.
You do YouTube? Who has Twitter?
I do Twitter.
More farmers do Twitter. I've never done
I like-
Twitter, and
well-
my staff tells me I have got to do Twitter. Because
They've been explained to me as like Facebook of all the people you know that you don't want to talk to, and Twitter's all the people that you've never met that you do want to interact with. So like Twitter's been this great tool to like get plugged in with all these people I would never otherwise meet, right? And it's lousy for like local contacts
Right.
because the guys I know are from all over the country, all over
Okay.
the continent.
Do you put videos on
Yeah.
Twitter? Yeah.
I probably use it like you should Instagram, right? I rarely post something about my farm without a video or a picture or something like that.
Okay.
Well, I know on our farm, 2 years ago, we were harvesting buckwheat in August. And of course, you know, the buckwheat's still green, you know, but the seed was dry. And of course, my son works off the farm, but he comes home and works a couple hours. And he was riding on the combine and took a picture of it looked like salad coming out of the back end of the combine, you know. And he put this thing on Twitter, I guess it is. You know, and all of a sudden he says, we got 200 hits on this thing, you know. Everybody knew what we were doing before we had the field done, you know. So that's really a nice way to share what's going on.
Right.
And, you know, if you're starting this, I think, and you can find some other people that's starting, or you know some people that's doing it, and you can talk with them and have a group that you can mentor. I mean, there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I tried this and it failed, or man, I planted this crop and it done great, you know, and sharing that information so you can grow. Because I'll tell you what, when your conventional neighbor's kicking your butt because, you know, this is stupid, you can't do this, and, you know, it gets kind of lonely out there by yourself.
Yeah, it does. If you're on Facebook, one of the best or one of the biggest cover crop sites is Everything Cover Crop.
Everything covered.
Yeah, and their Illinois has a cover crop page, and Ohio has a cover crop page too. But when I started this, I didn't know anybody. And so I felt like I was on an island. So Facebook was my buddy, or my group, you know, for going on there. But you can get some bad information on there too. You just got to know, what your goals are, because some guys are just terminating it, you know, when it comes out of the ground. And so if your goal is to plant green, then you want to make sure that you're listening to those guys and see what they're doing, and you know, interacting there too. So, but it's a lot of good information.
Well, and I think too also that as we move down the cover crop road and we eliminate some of the erosion, we need to think about reducing what you're doing as far as bought nutrients.
Yep.
Because all of a sudden, you know, we're getting soil samples back that the phosphorus is way too high.
Yeah.
Way too high, or the potash is way too high, you know. And the neat thing about a cover crop is when it brings up a nutrient or several nutrients, everything comes up evenly. You know, we don't have a deficiency in carbon, or magnesium or aluminum. It seems to bring those things up evenly as you do this, you know.
I had a question for Sue. You had a field day 3 or 4 years ago And the guy had a machine that was putting a cover crop in and drops down in between the corn rows. Is
The
that,
Highboy out at Orstead.
so is that producer still in the area, still doing that service?
Yeah, that's Mark.
Yeah, in Springport area.
Yeah, I think he
I
probably
think they
sold
just
that
do it
one.
themselves. Yeah, I think they sold that one, got another one.
He's got another one that, yeah.
So Dave, is that where you guys come up with the idea for yours?
Yes,
I mean,
uh-huh.
other guys have done it.
Right,
obviously.
right, yeah.
We was really impressed to think of those drops, drop
Yep.
that seed right down there. And,
Right. And it's just, to me, it's a little better than an airplane.
yeah.
It still don't replace it, putting it in the ground with a drill, but it's better than, we have better success with a Highboy applicator than you might have with an airplane. My theory is when guys call and they want to fly, first question asked is, how dry is it? And they'll say, well, it's been dry for a month. I said, don't fly. But if they say it's raining and we got rain in the forecast, fly it on. Because you need to rain 2 or 3 days after you fly to get that moisture on the soil and loosen up and get moisture in that seed to get it to sprout.
So you've had your Highboy for how many years?
We run it 2 years and got rid of it because we didn't have enough labor to run it. Yeah,
Oh, you're currently not using it?
not using it, right.
Okay.
But it's in the neighborhood, so it's getting used, Yeah.
In your seed quality, you mentioned earlier that there's a test you can do on your corn to test it, the protein and analysis. Is there that for the soybeans too? And
Yes, you can test protein on soybeans, right.
And corn?
And corn, correct.
At what point do you test for protein?
At harvest time.
At harvest, not before? You
Not
can't
before,
get an
right.
idea before?
Because all you can do with a plant is find out what nutrients in it. It don't give you what protein is in the grain. We got to harvest the grain and take it off and do it that way.
University of Minnesota currently does that for us. I mean, it's a volunteer program, and that's what they're looking for, is a protein level in the soybean.
I talked to a nutritionist because I'm a non-GMO guy, and they said there's no difference. And I was just wondering where you would send it, because I believe there is a difference. That there's a difference in the way my cattle look.
Yep.
And being
There is a
no-till
difference.
type, there's a huge difference.
Yes, right.
And, I was just curious where you sent it, because
Yeah.
people I talked to out here, they don't want to even deal with it.
We're fortunate enough that Dr. Lafik Islam from Ohio State has a lab, and he'll do the protein for us. But you can find labs,
Minnesota's got a volunteer.
Yeah, they got a volunteer program that you can send a sample to them. It only takes like a cup, and now it probably takes 2 or 3 weeks to get the results back because they have to grind it and break it down and turn it into solution and that kind of stuff. But I think it's well worth it. We're finding that our non-GMO corns tend to have 1.5 or 2% more protein versus a GMO on a conventional situation. In a no-till situation, we're about 3.5 points higher than the conventional farmer.
Those points being 6 or 9% protein, you're thinking?
Yes, yeah. And we have corns today that is producing 12% protein.
How many years have you been no synthetics?
We're not in zero. We're at, how am I going to say this? We're 80% less than we've been, and so I'd say we're about 20% right now from where we were. And that depends on the year. This year we've got 200 acres of corn with nothing on it because the cover crops got big. Last year the cover crop only got about 8 to 10 inches tall because we had a cool spring, and then it got 80 degrees the next day and the ground warmed up, so we started planting. It was time to plant, so we planted. So we had to put nutrients on then, so that it almost got everything, not quite, but almost everything that an agronomist would recommend. And that's why you have to be flexible enough, as a conventional farmer, you have to be flexible enough. If you're doing organics, man, you really got to have your ducks in a row to get organics to happen,
As of right now, you're not getting any sort of premium for having the higher protein content. You just
Through Cargill, our non-GMO beans, we're collecting $1.45 premium. Usually happens through March and June because we're storing the beans. On the corn, we've got 2 growers that's paying us a 35-cent premium for feeding hogs.
I agree with you, that protein makes a huge difference. I fed a grade A goat dairy and I could tell. It doesn't take long to show up. And in the long run, the bottom line, it was more cost efficient.
Well, we're those guys that grow those radishes as well, and it's just a hoop to see that stuff stick out of the ground. And we pasture them.
Yes.
Got cows out there, well, they're grazing on them right now.
Right.
Good stuff.
Right.
What radishes do for your, and they're just pennies on the dollar to put in the ground and have them be successful.
Right, right.
And I don't know, go ahead and call it on you.
Do they keep growing after the cattle graze them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, they're almost kind of like a pest crop, if I'm honest the truth, because they don't always die off on March 1st. There's a whole bunch of this, almost like a weed type situation.
Yeah.
You never tried them?
We're putting them in, we're putting cattle out in them this year.
Well, you don't-
There's good protein in lamb's quarter too.
Yeah.
There's
But-
good protein in hairy fetch.
Yeah.
I love hairy fetch. I had trigos on hairy fetch. I loved it.
Since this is their first shot at don't walk behind the cows very close if they're in the radishes. You know, I mean, they do get a little loose. You know, so,
But if they can paw through the snow after those radishes,
oh yeah, they will,
they'll eat them right up till middle of February.
yeah,
They keep right, that radishes keep on growing.
yeah.
Anybody consider putting cover crops in the next year or two?
Good.
Would you participate in a cost share program if it was available?
Yeah.
Yes,
Anybody here know tilling now, besides these guys? Strip till? Strip till? Steve?
good.
Well, you said the cover crops, and way back when, we had a no-nothing cedar bolted to the tailgate on the, not tailgate, but the discharge in the combine. You'd be surprised how much seed flies off when you're doing a six-row head. It don't take much seed to be planted right behind the combine. It's just another hopper you gotta fill, of course, but you
Right.
just kind of forget about it.
Yeah,
And let alone the spinner on the back of the cedar, the chopper itself, material out there, it just.
Dave, what is your corn starter application?
well, we're using 2 gallon on the seed, up to, about May 28th. If the soil temperature is 58 degrees or higher when we start planting, we don't use anything. If it's around 50 to 58, we'll put 2 gallon of a non-salt solution or a neutral solution in. It's like a 924-3. So we're picking up about 1 pound of nitrogen, a 1/4 pound of phosphorus, and about 1 1/4 pound of potash in that mix.
Yeah.
I mean, that don't seem like much, but it's just enough to kick that seedling going when the ground is a little chilly, you know. And that's our starter fertilizer program. We'll side dress with nitrogen at probably 10 gallons the acre or 30 pounds. If the crop is really nice, we get no side dressing done.
So you use a 20% with sulfur?
Just 28, no sulfur.
So when you're planting either green or brown, and you plant right through it. When you come back to crimp it and stuff, does it matter how if you crimp it one way, or do you crimp it both ways, or?
I didn't notice any difference planting in it after it's crimped.
Headlands too?
Pardon me?
You just go down until you hit the headlands, you pick up and come back.
Yeah.
Yep.
But like I said, you have to have either auto steer or something, or foam markers like I use, because I couldn't see where I was going. You can't tell where it's planted. Unless you have roll cleaners, which you don't want to use, you aren't disturbing that rye at all.
What if you were to use floating rope cleaner?
Well, they're
He'll
gonna-
still move it.
You're still moving it, and then they tend to wrap.
Yeah.
I guess I was just kind of wondering like how it would, if it would affect the way it pops up through that cover crop once you roll it.
No, it makes no difference however you crimp it. Once you plant, if you're planting crimping afterwards, you can run any direction you want to. The disadvantage is if it happened to rain and the ground's a little sticky and you're trying to roll and you're running over the corn row with the tractor wheel, you have a little trouble with emergence there. You know, so we either try to run the way we planted or run directly across it. You know, and the only thing you don't want to have is you don't want to have bare places in the field if the ground is a little sticky. Because those veins, and no matter which crop roller you buy, it doesn't matter whether it's blue, green, or black, or whatever, they fill up and you become the biggest dirt roller. It's like Fred Flintstone's car. It just becomes a big, and it
doesn't fall out.
It will not fall out. You know, 15 mile an hour won't kick it out, guys. I've tried everything.
That's usually gravel roads, Chapin.
So, you know, in a spade, it takes about 2.5 hours to dig that stuff out of there. You know.
I wanted to return it to John right away, but I had some work to do.
So we had some bare places.
John, you're going to do something on corn.
I'm gonna run it over corn stalks.
Amen.
'Cause I know it'll help the corn stalks break down. You shatter them.
Okay.
And actually, Joe Farney said that he saw someone go over them after the ground was partially froze.
Yeah.
And those corn stalks, they just go to
Disintegrate.
pieces.
Yeah.
And that helps the bacteria get in there and start breaking those down.
Faster, right.
I think the tar spot will help that this year.
Well, I don't think we have it.
I mean, just as you did some fields that, you know, still standing, you do the pinch test, I mean, you can pinch test and break for both ends. So I think that corn residue is gonna be pretty brittle this year.
We've used our crop roller several falls where we get behind and can't get it done with a drill. So we'll spread rye with a fertilizer spreader and then immediately go out there. Of course, my grandson loves to roll fodder in the fall because he's running about 16 mile an hour, you know. And you'd be surprised if you don't roll it. It'll take 2 weeks to get it so you can see it, but if you roll it, you'll see it in about 5 days. Just
the rye will come out.
the rise will, because as you vibrate that corn over that,
It gets below the,
it gets below and gets soil contact,
yep.
and that really helps that rye to come up quicker if it's spread. But again, the soil has to be dry. If it's a little sticky,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
you're not going to go out there if the soil's, you know, if you got a dewy morning, you don't go out when the dew's on. You know, you wait till,
Wait till it has a little crust of frost on it.
or you wait till it dries out at 11 or 12 o'clock. And,
Yeah.
but you know, a 15-foot roller, you can roll 50 acres, 60 acres in a day real easy without staying late, you know.
Yep.
I was just wondering, Tim, who are you selling your like edible products to, or are you packaging them?
No, I haven't had any luck finding somebody to package. Contract stuff, I'm going with Star of the West. But it's any of those, like MAC is in the driving market, ADM up there in Auburn area, Cooperative Elevator. So there's a number of different players you can get in with, like growing like blacks, navies, a lot of the specialty beans under contract. The little acreage stuff I'm doing, I've got like 2 acres of pintos, 2 acres of cranberry beans. That stuff I dropped them off yesterday. So I take them up to crop improvement. They clean them, run them over an eye, everything. Because I'm not doing a wonderful job of getting the combine completely cleaned out. Like it's just hard to get, it's not a seed combine, right? So you kind of like stagger it a little bit, right? Like you want different size, different colored products up against one another. So I can take it up at crop improvement. They put them in 50-pound bags. And then I'm taking them to like the farm market stores and selling it bulk. So out of everything, like of that whole thing of selling it at a consumer level, like the 2-pound coffee bags that I'm providing there, that's the most costly piece. Like it's the final end is where it all gets, like the costs. Like it's 25 cents a pound for that stuff. So, for bags.
It's so scary to grow though. You talk to some of these old boys and they'll tell you about how they used to buy a farm with the farm payment from what they got from those beans until like the 80s. And we had some really horrible weather like we did last 4 years ago, 3 years ago. And then they all lost their farm.
I look at-
A lot of these boys don't grow it anymore. Yeah.
I look at it this way, like we want diversified operations, right? You don't want to just grow one crop. I'm fine with diversifying my risk on all this sort of stuff. So we're like commodity, like corn, soybean production on, I don't know, 60, 70% of the farm. And then like we start getting riskier and riskier stuff. So I've got, I think, 40 acres of black beans under contract this year. Like I'm not going to get rich on them, but I'm not going to go broke either.
Right.
So I think it's, like, just don't get over your skis with some of this sort of stuff. Like, I planted flax, but I put in 2 acres. So, like, I'm hoping to build towards something bigger as we go with this. But it's a case, too, of, like, I'm not going to do something that, like, if it was a total loss, then I'm going to go bankrupt on.
I think of it like a portfolio. You buy
Yeah.
stocks,
Spread out
not
your risk.
bonds, and they just kind of level each other out, because I would much rather be here instead of this crap. This just gets old quick.
But I'm doing stuff off the farm, too, right? And so that's, I mean, we've got some stability there from income and all this sort of stuff. And it's not the right way you're supposed to farm, right? The only right way you're supposed to farm is if that's all you do and nothing else.
I want to know how you got that flax off.
We desiccated it, ran it with the 9500 combine.
Really?
Now it's a bear. Like I screwed up on it too. Like we can go down the flax path here for a second. Like the sprayer broke down just after I planted it, and like you can't get parts this spring, so I didn't get any pre-emerge on it, which means there were a fair amount of lamb's quarters out there. And I had trouble getting all the lamb's quarters seed out of it, because usually if you've got like weeds in your beans or something, they just crank the fan, open the sieves, and you can blow it out the back. The flax is lighter than like the weed seed. So there's not that much of it in the first place. We're in the process. I've got a lot of these jobs that are, half done. We're in the process of getting it finished up for this year, of taking one of those old flat bottom steel wagon with sides on the side of it. The guys would have used for seed in the past, right? Putting a grain bin floor in it, lifting up the front, putting a fan on it. So it's an aerated drying floor wagon for these couple. We did a couple acres of red corn last year, and that stuff's not going to get down to 15 on its own.
Right.
So we took the grain bin flooring, put it on a wagon, so there's some air under it, get some fans on it. And I've got a little cheap old Clipper 2B mill, ran it through that, so it took most of the green out of it. But that stuff it'll go up to crop improvement, and they'll clean it and bag it, and they do a nice job with it.
Do they?
Well, they get a little sense, like, last year I just took them some beans, and they came back kind of sheepishly and said, like, it's going to cost you like $8 a hundredweight on this. Like, are you okay with that? I'm like, well, that's fine. You'd never be able to bear that price in a commodity market. But if we're going to sell them for like $3 a pound at a farm store, it's part of the game.
Right.
I think it'd be easier if they had like polishers and stuff around here more, so like that, 'cause you get some of that mold on there and stuff, you run it through a polisher and you clean it right up and they're fine. There's nothing actually wrong with those beans, but they could be a problem issue and stuff. I think that's.
Well, the thing is, we got here in Michigan that like other places don't have. So you go like out to Kansas to talk to guys, like wheat's not even, well, not in Kansas, go to Iowa, right? Wheat's not even a viable crop. There is no diversification.
No.
There are a lot of old cleaning facilities around here. I grew barley last year. I took some over to a guy that's 5 miles away that does mostly seed corn, but they'll clean wheat seed and barley and all this sort of stuff. Like we've got places to be able to take seeds and get them cleaned of this different kind of stuff. It's not maybe common knowledge or common practice for like when we kind of fall into this just corn and soybean game, but all that stuff's out there. I mean, you just got to talk to somebody and figure out who can do this stuff.
Yeah. And as you diversify and do that, the labor becomes the real key here, because it takes labor to package this, it takes labor to get it done, but the rewards are really great. I mean, we grow help grow about 17 acres of pumpkins on a U-pick patch, and it's 5,000 bales of straw goes out during 6 weeks of Halloween. I mean, they spend, consumers spend more money for Halloween than they do for Christmas. Did you know that? They really do, So, you get, instead of $3 a bale for straw or 5, you get 10 or 7. They buy 10 stalks of corn in a bundle for $5, and, you sell 10,000 of those, and then you sell 17 acres of pumpkins, which is, somewhere between $50,000 and $60,000 worth of pumpkins. And,
It doesn't work if everybody does it.
it doesn't, no.
Not everybody wants to do it.
Nobody ever wants to do it,
It's too
right.
hard.
But, yeah, that's why Iowa has corn and beans. They can't, they can't do that, But if you're in a populated area, you need to think about where you want to be, and think about diversity is what we're talking about, and diversity is what we're talking about cover crops. If you diversify and quit tilling, your yields are going to be better, your soils are going to be better, more infiltration of water. We're going to have the streams run water more often if we can infiltrate it.
You said diversity. I got my neighbors right here that grow pumpkins and muck melons.
Yeah,
Or watermelons.
watermelon, right. There you
I
go.
wouldn't even consider it.
Yeah.
Works good.
Yeah, it works good, right.
We also do 100 acres of fresh market sweet corn.
100 acres?
We can't open unless we got 1,000 dozen. I mean, we got that much demand because we're close.
That's
to
$7
licensing.
to $10 a dozen? Okay, that's
No, we
good.
did 6.
Oh, wow. Okay. 1,000
I
dozen?
was stealing, but they were willing to take
I thought so. Yeah.
You guys talk about all this no-till. We've been strip tilling for 20 years.
Yeah, right.
And we're working ground that's been worked by our family for 150 years.
Yeah.
So it's all that organic from the past with horses took the topsoil off the hills. But we're still pulling over 240 bushel of corn off those same
hills.
clay hills with
Right.
strip till.
Yeah.
We get a little erosion, but not like the
Right.
cultivating did.
Right.
So, we're just here to tweak our cover crop. Right now, we're cover cropping and then strip tilling into cover
Crop.
crop.
Good.
But we do it all, what you call brown.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with that.
We want to tweak that a little bit.
Yeah.
So it doesn't green very well.
No.
Don't
Yeah.
put the cover crop there.
Don't put cover crop in?
Plant it where you're not going to strip till.
No, we gotta, the strip till works.
Yeah, it's just, strip till will work, yeah.
We own all the other tillage equipment, but it sits in the barn.
Yeah.
But you guys use wheat as a cover crop?
Cheap. Ben run wheat. It's cheap. And it works good.
Yeah.
We were doing some tile repair and we find them wheat roots
Roots.
down into the tiles. So
Yeah.
we figured it's working. We don't need don't need to bring rye and all that other on, but we
Yeah.
do want to put in like fetch or something else.
Yeah.
Along with the wheat.
Yep.
Because we're trying to do is also get that organic build up, but just keep tweaking a little bit. But we can't do 7 acres in a day planting. We gotta plant 107
Right.
to get it all. We do about 2,000 acres.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
But that's been working for us, the strip
Good.
till.
Dave, you had mentioned that your grandson had a video of a drone showing where the duals had
Yes.
crimped. Have you considered a different type of crimper? I mean, if the duals will do that tall a tire, could you create something that's just as big as just as?
Well, I think we didn't crimp the rye where the beans grew where the duals were, because I think it was that the rye laid down so the beans could get up through it, and where we didn't roll it, the beans actually got smothered out because the rye sucked all the moisture out.
But what I was getting at, did the tires actually crimp the rye?
Yeah, the tires actually crimped the rye.
So is the tractor that heavy and the tires did that good a job? Did
Yes.
you create something that
Right.
well with a-
And you'll see that in our hairy vetch and crimson clover fields. If you can walk in a crimson clover hairy vetch field, and 2 days later you can find your footprints, because those where you step
that
crimped that plant and it'll be dead at maturity. Now,
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. When I crimped it a week prior to when it was mature, it didn't lay down like it did when it should have been crimped.
right,
Just in that week.
right.
I mean, it just down.
Right.
And that was pretty stunning. Within an hour, what you had crimped and where it crimped the plant, it was pretty amazing to see it lay down that way. And I thought that was so much mass until I watched his videos and he's got this 7-foot tall stump.
Yeah.
Yes! Oh my God.
Well, and, you know, a policy on Dave Brandt's farm is there is nobody going to be in the field till I'm done planting corn. Because it's the same deal. You know, if the deer run across the field, guess what? You know, you're following that track because that's what you saw.
Yeah.
You know, especially in rye. Rye is probably the hardest thing to plant into because it's tall and it won't hardly separate it with a marker. And then if you roll it, it's even worse because a marker just runs on the top of it. You know, we're not fortunate enough. Grandson says I need to spend $10,000 for guidance, but he hadn't talked me into that yet. But, you know, I'm just that's the policy at our place. We don't want no tracks in the field till we're done planting. Yeah.
You said you drill into corn stubble.
Yes.
Do you have any trouble with the drill plugging up?
No.
And you follow the row?
Yes.
Or you got an angle?
Yeah,
Okay.
we follow rows, right. Yeah. And we'll run 190 to 230 bushel corn fodder behind the combine. Not a problem.
So being that you've been doing it for, say, 30, 40 years, why don't you think your neighbors are trying to follow suit?
I can't answer that.
I mean, obviously you're being
I mean,
successful at it and going
you know,
across the country doing it.
It seems like, we can go a mile and a half down the road and we got guys doing cover. We can go 10 miles down the road and we got a lot more guys. I got guys in Washington State, 10,000 acre guys using covers that we've talked to. And I talked to Gabe Brown and I talked to other people, and Gabe's the same way. You go out to Gabe's, he's got 5,000 acres of permanent pasture, 2,000 acres of row crops, and all around him is conventional tillage.
So you might have mentioned, so in 2019, were you able to plant everything then?
19, we planted everything, yes.
And according to your neighbors, were they 50% of their acres planted, or was?
Most of them were 100% unplanted.
Gotcha. So you think that difference right there would have
Yeah,
turned the switch on?
right.
They all had crop insurance too.
They all had crop insurance, yeah. And they really, they think we're trash farmers. I mean, that's the way we're treated. I mean, if you come, I'll take you down to the local restaurant because I try to take everybody that comes down to the restaurant to help their business, And there's a big calendar there that says, how long will Dave Brandt be farming? It really helps your ego when you go when you have that kind of thing happening, But,
Yeah, Tim, like with your variety of soils, are you tailoring conservation practices per soil type at all? I mean, you're saying you have that difference within a same field, right?
A little bit.
Okay.
So I'd say we have three things. We have just up ground, right? That's mostly sandy loams, kind of some rolling stuff. We've got muck. We have half the muck fields are just muck fields, right? And then half of them are like just mixes of all of it, right? So on the true muck ground, like we're not planting wheat. We're not rotating wheat through there. We're trying to do more like grass crops than legumes, right? We just don't need the nitrogen there. Mm-hmm. The priority there is eliminating soil subsidence, trafficability, and like getting something growing there to just suck up moisture, make it easier to drive across. The upground stuff, like we're trying to build carbon, get some nitrogen in there. So like the priorities on them are a little different. The challenging of the muck, like kind of puts us down a path a little bit that it's harder to do some of that stuff. Stuff doesn't overwinter as well because soil gets saturated and crops don't want to grow. But I will say that like the more we do, the less tillage we've done, the more cover crops we do, the easier it is to do all of this stuff. The muck is it's so much easier to manage now.
The muck thing, I have heard stories about some of these little boys, they'll go out and they did nothing but corn on that muck ground because it was the only thing that could grow for like 100 years. Yeah. And then they come in new age farming, whatever they came in, and they just struggle and struggle and struggle.
Yeah. Like if you come in and try to like conventionally manage muck, like it's a mess. You have to manage micronutrients. Like you have to be for both corn and beans, like be ready to go on spray manganese as often as it needs it. It's not expensive, but you had to do it. Guys have a lot of trouble. The corn yields better than beans in the muck. And so that's a challenge. But our bean yields are coming up. They're becoming more reliable. Like, just stop screwing it up. Stop doing stuff that messes up the system.
We've actually seen where, you know, the tractor is, it looks like a wave going across that muck. And,
Yes.
you know, we've got combines stuck in them, I mean, buried.
I get stuck less
sprayers,
now.
everything.
We've built better soil structure. Like, we don't get stuck in the same way. But yes, I mean, the tractor, I mean, everything does this, right?
Oh, yeah.
There's some guys out in MSU Extension plugged me up with a few folks that are coming out and doing like these new age soil test sorts of things. And they're putting soil probes in, and I had them put one on the muck field. And I jumped next to them. And like you can feel it. Like, we make it a policy not to put the grain cart in the field anymore. But back when we, you know, conventionally farmed and did all this stuff, like, you don't need to know if the cart's coming next to you. You can feel it in the combine. So it's just a different deal.
Well, I thank you all for coming out today.
Thank you.
I think our presenters, give them a round of applause.
Thank you.